everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And the streak of home game winning continues for the Oklahoma State K-State series. I believe it's up to 4 now.
Yeah, I think it's 4.
And the one game that was a loss was 2020, which doesn't count. So it's more the exception than anything else. But K-State won convincingly in what they really needed as a bounce-back game, where they ended up beating Oklahoma State 42-20. And really, it should be 42-13. Alan Bowman decided to start padding his stats because he is a bum. I can finally say it since there is no risk of a jinx. Alan Bowman is awful. And I was sitting next to Connor during this game, and he can confirm I refused to say that until the game ended.
It's true. You showed great restraint and not bad-mouthing Alan Bowman until we were clear of any hijinks that could ensue from a Alan Bowman comeback. But no, I completely agree. And I think most people with eyes, including Oklahoma State fans, would agree that Alan Bowman's just not a good quarterback. I mean, he threw for 364 yards, but that hardly matters. I mean, most of those were pretty empty yards, and I'm honestly shocked that he played the whole game. So there's that.
Yeah, and also he threw 2 picks and couldn't do nearly anything in the red zone. Most of his, I think like 70 of his yards came on one passing play, which was a trick play, which I don't want to bully anyone too bad, but shout out Jack Fabris for, yeah.
That was a 77-yard flea flicker to Stribling. So that was a pretty big chunk of yardage right there. That, and they also did get some chunk plays, but it was mostly in the middle of the field on some RPOs. That was about the only thing really getting them yards in this game was like RPO slants and breakers. That was really about it.
Yeah, for a time it was it was kind of for a little bit it was the Keenan Garber disaster class, honestly. Yeah, it was the first half. I mean, this is definitely one of those games where it was close at halftime and K-State just pulled away based on adjustments and playing a whole lot better just generally. And I want to give Keenan Garber his flowers for how he played in the second half. However, the first half was, the first half was really, really bad by him. And it wasn't just, him being slightly out of position or getting bad or like having bad luck. No, he was genuinely bad.
Yeah, he had a really rough stretch there. And the first half, honestly, it could have started to get out of hand on the first half, if not for the pass interference on Ty Bowman that they called that brought back that huge Jace Brown play, which kind of sucked. I would have given Jace Brown in almost all certainty his first 100-yard game of his career. He's hit 96 a few times, or at least once. And this game he had 78, so pretty solid day still. But yeah, it was a game that kind of once Avery settled down and made that touchdown pass to Garrett Oakley, even though it was a 1-point game at that point, that was really where momentum swung.
Yeah, and we always talk about the crowds when it's a K-State really good crowd. Student section was really good, and that's typical. The only complaint is the reentry policy still exists, but apparently, allegedly, that will be going away next year. So my lawyers told me to not make any further comment about that.
Yeah, I will say there wasn't. I'd say early in the game there wasn't quite as much juice as there was at like the Arizona game, but I think a lot of that just has to do with the timing of the game, because I think 11 a.m. games tend to be a little bit of a slower start crowd-wise. If I had to guess, or if I had to say, But still, it was a good crowd and it was pretty high energy. Really until that last Avery rushing touchdown where he just made everybody look stupid, and then at that point the game was pretty well sealed for the most part.
Yeah, and it just got to that point, and once K-State sort of found their footing and got their momentum, the game was basically over at that point. But you have anything else to say more generally before we get into game day grades?
No, I think we're good to get into grades now.
All right, so welcome to game day grades, where we go through every single position group, including coordinators, giving them a grade from A+ to F. F meaning they either single-handedly lost us the game, which we didn't lose, so that's not happening this week. And A+ means they near single-handedly won us the game. We're going to start, as we always do, with the man under center, and that is Avery Johnson, who ended up going 19 for 31, 259, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception through the air, and then 2 touchdowns for 60 yards on the ground. The only blemish on Avery Johnson during this game was like 1 overthrow and 1 play where, obviously the one where he got picked, but I honestly put that more on Carver Willis immediately getting sent to the explosion room, where he died on that passing rep, and Avery, because he is 19 years old, thought, wait a minute, I'm getting more pressure. I should probably get rid of this now, and then made a poor decision on where to get rid of it. I don't necessarily blame him for that, because, I mean, just consider the circumstances and how quickly that pressure got there. And honestly, the rest of his game was so beautiful. Like, this kind of felt like what I thought the ceiling for an Avery Johnson game would be in his sophomore year. Not in general, but for his sophomore season. And to see him hit that in game 5 is really, really encouraging. He doesn't get an A+ because of the interception. I can't in good conscience do that. But he is getting a very, very easy A, because he has always, for the entirety of this season, he's been a national talking point. This game is going to make that national talking point even more poignant.
I guess I have a bad conscience because I gave him an A+, and I did grapple with it for what it's worth. Like if I wanted to pick to negate it, and I think normally it would, but I think that otherwise his performance was just so above the standard for really K-State quarterback play most of my life, and that's no inherent disrespect to K-State quarterback play. That's just that this was a genuinely all-time performance on an individual level for Avery Johnson, but for the one pick, which has been maybe one of the few like actually persistent issues of his, which is he does seem to have some trouble overthrowing the short passes. He does miss a lot of short passes high, which all things considered, that's a pretty easily rectifiable problem.
The Jaron Lewis overthrow the drag.
Yeah, it's nothing that bad. Like I watched him hit like 3 drags in this game, so I still gave him an A+, because he was, well, I guess I have to say arguably the best player on the field, because DJ Giddens was on the field too. But it was still a fantastic performance for Avery Johnson. Finally connecting on the deep ball in stride with Jace. Hit another one as well that was called back for the Ty Bowman pass interference, which was
super weird, but
yeah, it wasn't necessarily unfair, but I think it was more of a Ty didn't sell it well than it was actually a pass interference, because I think it was intended to be a pick, or it definitely was, but he didn't really actually do anything, and he just made it very obvious that he was trying to pass interfere. So that just went haywire there. Then Avery had that a 30-yard touchdown run that would have, I suppose, just padded his stats a little bit more and added to his rushing total. So beyond that, like, I mean, there's I can't really find many blemishes in this game. He made some huge throws in this one, so I'm really happy, and it's a A+ from me.
Yeah, I'm not going to push too hard against that. I mean, just different, slight variation. I think you and I both have an A+ for the running backs, though, and in a game that somehow that included Ollie Gordon II, he wasn't the best running back on the field, and that was DJ Giddens. And if DJ Giddens ran faster than like a 4.7, he might honestly be the best running back in the country, fighting for that top position with like Judkins and the guy from Boise State. Is it Jeanty?
Oh, Ashton Jeanty or Jonty?
Yeah, Jeanty. Yeah, Jonty Jeanty. He'd be in that competition. The only downside is he does run like a 4.7.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, and that might be why he was kind of under recruited, but whatever, he's still an amazing running back. He ends up going for 187 on the ground with a catch for 22 yards. And that's not to say that Dylan Edwards didn't do anything, because he finally got more than 7 touches. He got 10, 8 for 22 on the ground, and then 2 for 12 through the air. It's improvement. I'm not going to complain. A+ for the running backs, because, I mean, damn.
Yeah. Any day that your number one running back averages 12.5 yards a carry on 15 carries is a really good day for the running backs. And it was not just one, but 2 major runs. And he actually at one point had more than 187 yards. I think we were trying to get him to 200 at the end of the game, and he got tackled for loss a couple times. Yeah, because I think he was at like 12 carries for like 190 or something at some point. And we really wanted another DJ Giddens 200-yard game, which 200 total yards is still a fantastic feat. He had 209, I think, in this one. But no, DJ's just been phenomenal. Now 3 of his 5 games this season have been 100-yard performances, with the others being 86 and 93. And he's already over 600 yards on the season. He's averaging 121 a game, and somehow only has 2 rushing touchdowns this season, despite all of that, which is really strange. It's because the tight ends are hoarding all the touchdowns right now. LePack must have some dirt on Connor Riley or something. Yeah, Dylan, his average wasn't great. But he did have a handful of runs that he was just like a shoestring tackle away from just exploding and really getting a massive game, maybe a touchdown. And Joe Jackson also played a bit at the end, and he was doing Joe Jackson things. So a solid day for the running backs. Again, A+.
And I also will say that Dylan Edwards was maybe a collective of 3.5 inches from having a 100-yard rushing day. That man kept getting grabbed by his cankles, and it was so upsetting.
Yeah.
But the next room is the wide receivers, and I mean, we said it in the preview that this was going to have to be a day for the wide receivers to sort of show out because of the amount of man coverage that Oklahoma State plays. And I don't want to say that they did. I don't want to say that they were world beaters, but they were good. They were genuinely really good today. Chase Brown, 4 for 78 and a touchdown. Jaden Jackson came out of nowhere to have 5 for 55. I think he knew that he was being threatened for his snaps like another receiver. Keegan Johnson got 4 for 52. And then Ty Bowman collects his first start on offense, goes 1 for 19 and a really unfortunate penalty. And this was another example of, you look at them, the wide receivers only got a grand total of 14 catches. And you're like, that's fine. But they were getting consistently open. Like they keep doing this. Like they've been genuinely good. And Jace Brown was like, again, maybe centimeters away from having like 130-yard receiving day. Like the only negative is Cephas still hasn't broken out. But even then, Jaden Jackson sort of picked up that slack with his receptions. I gave them an A-, and that's because of how consistently they were getting open. And, this is easily a performance where, Avery takes another half second to scan the field. Like probably 2 times that raises it up to an A. But I was really impressed with the receivers today, A-.
I give him an A, really similar. The main reason for it, beyond like everything you said, I agreed with, so I won't rehash it. But I did want to give some flowers to Dante Cephas, who didn't see any targets, but on one of Avery's longer runs, he was pretty excellent with some downfield blocking in tandem with somebody else. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Keegan or Trey, maybe. But Dante's, he did have some good moments that don't show up on the stat sheet. And otherwise, the receivers have been pretty consistently good at downfield blocking all year. Trey Spivey's somebody that's done that pretty well this year too. And then, of course, they just overall had a pretty great day. Jaden did have, I think, the slight overthrow from Avery was classified as a drop. That was kind of similar to the overthrow to DJ that was picked. That's kind of like both of them could do a little more, but like there's also not much that the receiver could have done. So it's a mix of blame, I would say, on both of them. But unfortunate for Jaden, I guess, that he gets credit with a drop there. But an A for the receivers on what was a really, really quality game for them.
Tight ends, there was only 2 catches between them, but both were touchdowns. Garrett Oakley, 1 for 19. Will Ancio, 1 for 2, and obviously both collected touchdowns. They run blocked very well. They got 2 touchdowns. They were consistently open. A-.
I gave him an A. Really similar reasons. Will Ancio, a week off getting his first career reception, gets his first career touchdown. It was a very high pass on the jump pass, but luckily Will Ancio is like 7 feet tall and has like a 12-foot wingspan, so he was able to bring it in. And then Oakley got his first touchdown reception of the year. He's had a slow start to the season. He's kind of been fighting with some injuries to get on the field, so snap counts have been pretty low. But I'm glad to see him start to get involved again. And yeah, they run block. The run blocking was superb from the tight ends in this game. So that's an A from me.
Offensive line, my only real complaint is the play where Carver died, basically. But outside of that, I felt they were really, let me look at the specific pressure rates here because PFF has that. And by PFF, I mean a nondescript website that we subscribe to. It was 30% pressure rate, which isn't great, but I mean, a lot of that was also when blitzed. In fact, all of those pressures were when blitzed. So sometimes they send one more than the other. And, just looking at the pressure rate, I'm still willing to give them an A because the only like bad moment is Carver dying. But I will say, and if you would have told me this at the beginning of the year, I would have called you crazy. But Connor and I had this discussion at the game. There is a legitimate argument that Sam Hecht has been the best offensive lineman this year. It's not – I would still give that honor to Kilty because Kilty's been really good, especially in pass protection, which is really important for Avery. Hecht has a very good argument.
Yeah, I gave him an A as well. And ditto on the Hecht shout out. I thought he's been pretty excellent this year. Taylor Poirier as well. Taylor is finally starting to put together a consistent season. And we're kind of seeing where Kleiman was coming from several years ago, where he said that he thought that he was the best lineman on the roster, and that was a roster that included Cooper Beebe. And it was Cooper Beebe, who we knew was good at the time, but just not quite how good. But yeah, the offensive line gets an A from me. Garbo's a little frustrating in pass protection, I felt. PFF disagrees, but I disagree with PFF, so I reserve the right to do that. And otherwise, I mean, I don't really have a lot of complaints about them. And really, most of the pressure that they got, like Avery is able to just kind of disguise it, which is both a pro and a con, because like it may be that your line pass protection isn't as good, but your quarterback's just really good at evading it, like Avery is. But this was generally actually a really good game. And the pressure they brought, it was never too much for Avery to handle. Even that last pressure on his last rushing touchdown, the fourth quarter, that was blindside pressure that I think a lot of quarterbacks would have just got blown up and even fumbled there. But Avery just, I mean, that was a moment for the highlight reels. That scramble away from the sack and the pump fake that seemingly got everybody in the stadium, based on some tweets I saw, and it was pretty incredible to watch in real time. But no, the line, really, really pleased. They get an A.
Now we get into Connor Riley, the offensive coordinator, who, once again, I find myself eating a lot of crap, because, like I said, I'm gonna preface it every time that I was not a Connor Riley guy. I was not really a believer, and eventually I'll get tired of saying it. But today's not that day, because I know for some reason every time there's angst on Twitter, every time that Riley makes a decision that like 95% of the, well, I'm not even going to say 95%, like 99% of the world's population would have made in that given situation. But everyone else, just like that 1%, decides to be really, really loud and annoying about it. Connor Riley called a really good game. Connor Riley, I don't think, has called a truly bad game this year, because the BYU game was not a game. It was a torturous experience. And even then, I don't even think that was Connor Riley's fault. The only complaint that I have with Connor Riley is, outside of that first scripted drive in the first quarter, I wasn't the biggest fan of how he called the first quarter. And then he dropped 14, 14, and 7. So, I mean, what? Am I going to knock him down because I didn't like one decision he made, like at 2 drives in the first quarter? No, because otherwise he called an amazing game. He gets an A+.
Yeah, I agree. This was a fantastic game for Connor Riley, probably his best on the year. A big thing I guess you could maybe say to discredit it is that we punted like 7 times, which is crazy to think about, that we punted 7 times and scored 42, which that just goes to show the importance of the turnovers that we got. But also some of those punts were just bad luck. Like the drive at the end of the first half where it should have been that really long completion to Jace. We get that pass interference and get 2nd and 21 instead. That's just tough luck. That happens. And there's not much you can do as an OC in that situation. Which also, I know there was a bit of angst about just running a draw on 2nd and 21 there. I really don't have an issue with that in that situation, because I think you're more likely than not to create more problems if you push in that situation.
You would example, look at last week. That's exactly what happened last week.
Yeah. So that didn't bother me too much. I really can't say that it was a big deal, but no, Riley was otherwise really great in this game. I really don't know what else to say other than, I mean, he keeps finding ways to get DJ Giddens at like one long run per game, it seems like, and this time he got two of them. Um, Generally speaking, I mean, this was a really high level game that Connor Riley called. So an easy A plus.
Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, we start with the defensive line, who didn't get any sacks on Alan Bowman, but that's because Alan Bowman gets rid of the ball in like 0.3 nanoseconds. And most of the time he's underthrowing those, so it doesn't really matter all that much. But they were getting pretty decent pressure on him, which, that's really all I would have, that's all I really I would have asked, because they had a 30% pressure rate, which again is pretty solid. And they were really disruptive in the running game, which is kind of that's been the formula for beating Oklahoma State, is make Alan Bowman beat you, because he ain't doing it. So the defensive line to me was one sack away, because there were opportunities where they could have gotten in there and they could have, gotten to Bowman maybe a little bit quicker. That's the only thing keeping them from an A plus. I gave them an A because they were a consistently good factor for the K-State team.
Yeah, I gave them an A as well. Really similar reasons. I would have given them an A plus if they had gotten home at one point, which they got pretty close a handful of times. Chidi Obiaizer quietly had a really good day passing, or pass rushing, I should say. But Bowman already wasn't great in this game, but under pressure when he was blitzed was really bad in this one. So we read the book on Alan Bowman, which is only one sentence, and it's just that he sucks, blitz him a lot, and the defensive line did a really good job. I'm doing their job, I guess, more often than not, because some of their pressure stemmed, I guess, also from some like more selfless pressures, like on the last pick to Jacob Parrish. Ryan Davis did some unsung hero work on that particular rep, so he deserves some flowers for that. But an A for the defensive line. Pretty pleased with them.
And then I think in a game that included a 180-yard performance from a running back, I don't think the running backs were the best room on the day. That goes to the linebackers, because if the defensive line was just average on the day, because I think they were above average, especially in run defense. If they were just average, it almost wouldn't have mattered, because the linebackers were on such a heater that they would have gained maybe a handful more of yards, and it wouldn't have mattered otherwise. Every single linebacker, and I do mean every single linebacker that played, including like Zach Wittenberg and Bo Palmer, had a very, very good day of making Alan Bowman uncomfortable and still staying in their run fits. There's only one run fit that I could think of that wasn't perfectly played by the linebackers, and that was Austin Romaine on like a counter play, which is like coincidentally one of the only running plays that actually worked for Oklahoma State. But I mean, the linebackers were all on a heater. They were probably the best room of the day, and it's an A plus.
Yeah, I give him an A plus too. Austin Romaine has continued his reign of terror. At this point, he's got to be pretty close to being the best middle linebacker in the entire conference. And everyone else had a pretty good day too. Even like you mentioned, Zach Wittenberg, even if it wasn't on defense, he had some great special teams plays. He had one solo great tackle, and then he had another one where he teamed up with, I think it was Jack Fabris, for a huge tackle on a kickoff coverage. But no, it was a really great day for all of the linebackers. I can't really think of anybody that I would ding or give a lower grade to. So I just fantastic stuff all day for containing the running game and playing great run defense.
Now we move on to the defensive backs, and spoiler alert for the last two grades, everyone got an A. However, this one was very much me saying I don't want to ruin it for everyone else. Keenan Garber had a bad game in the first half. Honestly, if his first half continued, he was on the fast track to getting benched. Jack Fabris had a good special teams day, but whenever he was on the field actually playing safety, no, not yet. Not there. Not there yet. But outside of those two, who admittedly are probably responsible for the majority of the points Oklahoma State scored, everyone else had a really solid day. And I don't want to punish the entire room for the actions of two people, especially when everyone else played pretty well. I ended up giving them an A-, which I will admit is generous, but they did hold Alan Bowman to just a hair above 50% completion, picked him off twice, and the only touchdown that he got was on a flea flicker trick play, which, again, falls to one person, which I think I've already said. But they get an A- generously.
I also gave them an A-, and for pretty much identical reasons, because I got to the end of my grading, and I was like, wow, I gave everyone else an A. The DBs kind of deserve like a B or a B+, which is still good, but this is kind of a good vibes episode to cleanse everything. And so I just wanted to give him an A-. Fabris had a rough day. Keenan was particularly rough in the first half, but there were still some bright spots. Justice James had a really nice pass breakup right at the goal line. I think in the first quarter, Siegel had his pick. Jacob Parrish had a great pick and what was some of the best coverage I've ever seen him play. And Jacob Parrish has been playing for a while and has been pretty good that whole time. And he did that against a receiver that is probably 5 or 6 inches taller than him. So on top of everything, I mean, that's just a wildly impressive play from a physicality standpoint for Jacob Parrish. Other than that, Jordan Riley should have had a pick. He nearly did, but still should go down as a PBU, I think. PFF is crediting Jordan Dunbar with a PBU, which I do not remember at all. I'll go ahead and say that he did. Who am I to besmirch his good name? But I don't remember it, at least. But no, there were definitely some very rough individual performances from the defensive backs. But outside of the particularly rough performances, there was a lot of good from the defensive backs in this game.
Yeah. Now, the defense, which is Joe Klanderman, it was, 13 points to an offense that had Ollie Gordon, and really the only thing that they could do was RPO you to death, which really, that's not something that you can really – I don't want to say the defensive coordinator can't do anything about it, but their options are pretty limited when it comes to the RPO game. So, listen, Joe Klanderman, he didn't get a sack, but he got consistent pressure on Alan Bowman, and Alan Bowman was clearly pissing himself every single time he had to throw the football, which you may be saying that's not an abnormal performance from Alan Bowman, to which I say fair enough, but also it's still something you're worth giving credit for to Joe Klanderman. So, yes, Joe Klanderman had to go up against Ollie Gordon, God's drunkest driver, and Alan Bowman, who is probably eligible for AARP, but he still had a really, really good day, I would say. So I gave him an A+.
Yeah, I gave him an A. Mostly just the defensive backs struggling a little bit on a few individual levels, but beyond that, I I really don't have a lot of qualms with what he did or how he called it. Particularly, I found interesting that this felt like one of the more bend don't break games that we've ever seen in the Kleiman era. We were giving up a lot of empty yards on the middle of the field, and it turned. And most of those drives just turned into absolutely nothing for Oklahoma State, which is not a philosophy I feel like we've seen a ton of from Chris Kleiman. It was kind of like best case scenario Bill Snyder defense. Which, granted, when you're facing a quarterback that's prone to making bad choices and bad throws, I mean, that's really not an awful option. So I'm generally really pleased. I actually don't know why I didn't give him an A plus now that I'm saying all this out loud, so I guess I should.
Yeah, I've had a few moments like that. But that's it for game day grades. So now I want to sort of take a zoom out and no. We can talk about general takeaways and then we can zoom out for the full conference picture because wow, what an interesting conference picture. But I'm very pleased with the performance that K-State put forth, and it was an amazing response to a really bad performance in which everything went wrong. And that's not to say that there was, this game was perfect either and they had no adversity, because no, they were tied after one quarter and down at one point. And actually, were they down at one point? I think they were. Yeah.
Yeah, we were down 10-7 and 13-7, I think. But once we got to 14, we never trailed again.
Yeah. It was just one of those times that they took advantage of a team that was vulnerable, despite the fact that they had a few slip-ups on their own. And that's kind of what you want for a team that is going to look to compete in the Big 12 or really any conference is, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have bad games. The trick is to make sure that you don't let those bad games snowball and you don't let bad choices turn into bad games, basically. And I think that it's a more resilient team than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for. And I think that's I think that'll sort of be, I don't think that's going to go away unless they win, because everyone is going to remember the BYU game. But I was really impressed with this bounce back performance.
Yeah, which I think brings up another interesting point that Kleiman's teams have just been so good off of losses, especially from 2022 onwards. I can't really remember the last time that we actually had a losing streak. Now that I think about it, probably would have been back in 21. I think. At the end of I think at the end of that season, the Baylor Texas stretch, I think. But yeah, it's like this team is Kleiman teams have been really good at bouncing back from losses. And the only time I was ever really worried about it in this game was on the Avery pick early, which at that point there were people in our section behind us. I overheard one guy say Avery isn't the answer, and he then went on to have a 5 touchdown game that got him listed as like one of the top performers of the week on some college football wrap up show that I saw vaguely in a background on ESPN. I have no idea who said it, but I saw Avery get mentioned, and I was like, "Hey, I know that guy," and that was all of that. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. So now we can sort of zoom out here because this is a very interesting conference picture. And now, we have time. We always try to keep episodes under an hour, but I feel like this is worth mentioning because I don't believe in who is currently at the top of this conference. And I could say that because we only play one of them. I don't think the 3-2-0 teams are going to be. I don't think any of them are going to represent the Big 12 in the Big 12 championship because it's BYU, who I've made my stance on very abundantly known, Colorado, who, admittedly has played much better in recent weeks than they had before, and then Texas Tech, who almost lost to Abilene Christian. And I could say anything about them that I want because we don't play them this year. So, those are the only teams that are 2-0. Utah just fell to Arizona, a team that we beat bad at home. Iowa State just blanked Houston. I'm not going to make a comment about Houston. We play them. I'm not doing that. I'm not getting baited into doing that again. But Iowa State just beat them and blanked them. West Virginia beat, I think their one conference win is KU. They were on bye this week.
Yeah, West Virginia. Yeah, they beat KU.
UCF just got mopped by Colorado. Cincinnati is led by Scott Satterfield and could literally beat anything. Plus, I think they just choked their most recent game, didn't they?
Yeah, they lost by 3 at Tech.
And they were ahead.
They were tied at half, and they missed a game-tying field goal as time expired. But yeah, they were up 14-3 at one point in that game.
Yeah, jeez. And the only other team that has a conference victory is TCU, and that's up against KU, who's returned down to earth. If only someone could have possibly predicted that. But no one, and even if you're at the bottom of this conference, theoretically, you could still, if you run the table, you theoretically could find yourself back in Arlington. And I don't think that there are any favorites anymore for making the Big 12 championship. I mean, because what? Who are you going to say? I mean, because
I think your best is Utah right now for when Cam Rising returns. But even then, I mean, like losing at home to Arizona, I mean, that was honestly shocking. I think that was the biggest surprise out of the conference this weekend. Was not just Utah losing, but at home, which is not something that they do particularly often. I heard the broadcast say, I think it was their first loss to an unranked team at home since 2017, which is absolutely absurd. And so it's that's a huge shock, which I imagine Cam Rising is going to be back probably next week for their game at Arizona State. But yeah, the Big 12 is kind of wide open right now as things stand. I mean, unless you're Houston, who's yet to score a point in Big 12 play, like they're currently in their 2 Big 12 games, they've been outscored 54-0. So it's a suboptimal start for Houston. But KU and Houston do play each other October 19th. So that's at Arrowhead. We may get some pretty clear answers as to how bad KU is and like how bad Houston is with that game. So I will be watching that one very closely from the Alleycat World headquarters.
Yeah, I honestly think that your sort of tier 1 competitors, even that gets muddy. Your tier 1 competitors as it stands right now is like Iowa State, God help me, BYU is somehow there. I don't think they should be, but I feel like at this point they have to be. Us, Utah.
I think you might have to throw in Colorado. I don't really
have to throw in Colorado at this point.
Yeah.
Which is funny because they have received a single vote in the AP poll.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to think of them because they blew out UCF, but UCF about lost to a not very good TCU team. But like we're also at a point where I think there might just be a lot of teams in this conference that are at about the same level, and it's in like an any given day thing where if you just catch a team on the wrong day, they just wake up on the wrong side of the bed, then you might roll them. But it's very possible that if the game happened a week later, that the opposite would happen. So it's going to be interesting to see who emerges out of that. But I think there's more questions than answers right now in regards to like who's actually contending, who's like there's no locks at this point. If Utah had not looked as bad as they did, they would have been the obvious pick. But I mean, I watched the fourth quarter of that game, and they didn't like just lose; they looked bad in that game. They had multiple opportunities. There was one drive in particular that was just one of the all-time gut punch drives I've ever seen in my entire life, where like they got Arizona, they punted and they backed them up pretty far, and it was all the way down to their 13-yard line. They get a 26-yard completion on a second and short, third down 11, 41-yard completion, and then third down and 11 again on the next set of downs, 35-yard touchdown pass. I mean, like I'd lose it if I were a Utah fan in that situation. So like that was some incredible resiliency by Arizona. And keep in mind, this is an Arizona team that we faced at home not that long ago.
Handily.
And when you blew them out, and blew them out pretty well. And they just went on the road and handled the odds-on favorite at that point in time, Utah. So it really isn't an any given night sort of deal right now. But BYU, it looks like they were legit for a bit, but then Baylor, they really just about let Baylor back in, and Baylor's just not good. Sorry, Dave. I know you're paying players now, but you're not going to get paid by that university much longer.
You are not long for this world, man. But I'll even take it a step further. I don't even think it's just an any given night thing. I think it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors thing where you will get some uniquely bad matchups for certain teams. I'll come out and say it. I think that Colorado is a uniquely bad matchup for Iowa State and K-State. I think that West Virginia is a uniquely bad matchup for Iowa State. I think Arizona is a uniquely bad matchup for Utah. And to me, it's just going to come down to a lot of that stuff. Like, okay, who's on your schedule? And in this game of rock, paper, scissors, that is the Big 12, who has, like, who is your worst matchup going to be? And I really think that at this point, the worst rock, paper, scissors matchup for K-State is Colorado, the Colorado Buffaloes. But and the only reason I don't say Iowa State is because Iowa State is basically the same team as K-State.
Pretty much.
Except for their defense is a little better and their offense is a little less inspiring when you don't have a foot of snow, and also Will Lee to give speed boosts to the running back.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a really fascinating year for the Big 12 because I don't think there is a favorite anymore.
Not at all. But yeah, that Colorado game, that's going to be super interesting because Colorado is going to be super confident. They're definitely going to be feeling good going to their next game, which is going to be us. They have a bye week too. So two teams coming out bye weeks. K-State historically under Kleiman has not been that great off of bye weeks. So hopefully this year we buck the trend. But I mean, it's going to be at their place. It's the first time we've been in Boulder since probably like 2009-ish. It's been a while. I'm going to be at that game too. And my track record of road games is not, I'd say it's actually probably about 500. I was about to say it was really bad, but I'm like, actually, like it's probably about 500 because I've been to a lot of KU games. So,
well, but the last one that you went to was generational heartbreak.
True. I guess that's true. We're either going to get a blowout win or generational heartbreak. Because I was also a Baylor 2012. So it could be anything. All right. Apologies to the viewers. I hope you didn't have earbuds. But no, my eyes were bleeding after that Baylor game. That was traumatizing to a young Connor Balthazar. But I mean, yeah, like that's looking like a game. I mean, whichever team comes out of that is gonna not necessarily be in the driver's seat, but is gonna be in a really good spot. Like for K-State, after Colorado, we're at West Virginia, KU at home, at Houston, then we host Arizona State and Cincy before that last fixture against Iowa State in Ames. So it's imperative that we find a way against Colorado.
Yeah. And, I think that this game is a good sort of jumping off point to get your confidence back going into Boulder. And, yeah, that's pretty much all I got. I mean, other than the fact that, and we can talk about this later on, but I'm thinking it's more and more likely that the team, at least one team that goes down to Arlington, has 2 losses in conference play.
Yeah, with how the season has gone to start conference play, it really is kind of feeling that way, isn't it? So, I mean, I guess we'll see. It's still really early on the conference slate. Only 2 weeks through. It feels like longer just because we played Arizona, so that keeps throwing me off.
Yeah.
But I mean, next weekend I think will be interesting. In particular, since K-State doesn't have a game. So we're really going to be able to take in the other games pretty effectively. So I'll be paying close attention to our conference mates.
Yep. Anyway, do you have any final notes about this Oklahoma State game before we sign off?
Not looking forward to going to Stillwater next year and losing. That's all I really have to say.
That's a next year problem.
Yeah, that's true. We're a year away from that. I'll just be happy that we won for now.
Also, I'm a little congested, so unfortunately the bit will have to stop here, or at least be on pause for now. So thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're aggievillealleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us more personally, I am at ACEdwards00.
I'm at Connor Balthazar, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out both the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store and the supporters link, both found in our podcast Twitter bio. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe out